Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the InterDrone Podcast, your 30,000-foot view of the commercial drone industry. My name is CJ Smith. It is Tuesday, October 20th. Joined today with Leslie Wolf, conference producer for InterDrone, and our special guest, Nicholas Flom. He's the executive director of the Northern Plains UAS test site up there in North Dakota. Really excited to have him on and talk about the current state of testing here in the United States, what these test sites was top of mind for them as we move forward into the end of 2020 and into 2021. North Dakota is making some great progress on a BVLoS network, which we're super excited to talk to Nick about as well. And Nick actually just wrapped up a call with the FAA. So excited to talk to him a little bit about what was discussed. He mentioned that the FAA grouped some of the test site directors together and gets kind of a latest and greatest update from them. So Nick, thanks so much for being here this morning. Can you give our audience maybe just a brief overview of the North Dakota UAS site, work that you guys do, and maybe a little bit about how you kind of got into the drone space and became the executive director for the test site?
Yeah, perfect. First off, thanks for having me on and be able to share our story a little bit with you guys. So we'll start with from the test site standpoint. We're selected. We're actually coming up on our 7th birthday. December 30th of 2013 is the day that the FAA made the announcement for the selection of 6 test sites, North Dakota being one of them. Since that time, we've actually brought on in 2016 our friends down in New Mexico. So there's 7 designated test sites by the FAA right now. And you look back at 2013, at that point, there was no such thing as Section 333s. There was no such thing as Part 107. There was, none of these, no such thing as package delivery. I mean, that wasn't even a concept. So it's pretty cool to see, a lot of the work that the test sites have been able to contribute and, the work that we've done that's kind of laid a lot of the foundation for, rulemaking, policy changes that have come out. From myself, the standpoint, when North Dakota was selected, I was one of the first hires. I actually came on as their director of safety shortly after the selection, and then back in 2016, I became the executive director, kind of helping steer the ship with an incredible team to, work with. We work with private industry. We work with the likes of companies like Xcel Energy that have, they're working on how do I remove the helicopter off of their transmission line inspections and replace that with a drone operation. We've worked with NASA, through their UTM pilot or their UTM first 4 builds. And then, the FAA they've transitioned from NASA to the FAA as part of the UTM pilot program as well. So, we work both with, private industry, we work with our federal partners, and then, we get a little bit of a quasi, which is, one of the discussion points you mentioned. I was on the phone with the FAA earlier. We have a program. It's called it's a broad agency announcement. It's a funding opportunity through the FAA to work directly with the test sites in order to conduct research. So there's a call out right now for the BAA. This is actually the second call that's been made, and $6 million available for private industry to work with the test sites. So you got the federal funding component with private industry working with test sites. To me, that's a great trifecta.
And so those FAA calls, what is that like? You mentioned it's only 30 minutes and they brought a number of the test site directors on the line. And what is that like? And how much are you guys able to get done in 30?
Actually, so the 30 minutes, I should correct on the 30 minutes is actually a one-on-one. I mean, that's just me
Okay,
and
good.
me and the program manager. We actually have 2 days. We have 2 days of a technical interchange meeting, and so I'll say day one, which is will be happening today. We each give an update. We give an update on, what have we been working on? What are some of the different types of lessons learned that we can really share with others? My lesson learned to the other test sites are, for me, it's going to be, how have we helped enable beyond visual line of sight operations and for electric utility? That's been something we've done for years. And, give the other test sites, what kind of process have we gone through? And then the second day is, what are some of the up and coming types of things that we should know about? That can be everything from, COAs that we've received. What does that look like? What we have nationwide. We have, if there's any types of incidents or accidents that are happening at the test sites that we could all learn from. Of course, counter UAS is a really big deal, and getting a briefing from the FAA on, I'll say, the do's and don'ts of that type of research as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Leslie and I had Jennifer Richter on the podcast 2 weeks ago, and she's an InterDrone speaker, and we talked a lot about counter UAS and just the complexity of implementing a system like that. Who's in charge, who is the authorization to shoot down a drone, and how do you go about receiving that authorization, and what technology can you use? How do you identify if it's a bad actor? I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. So we respect the complexity there. What did the test site look like in 2013? What types of operations were you guys conducting? And you mentioned, the long before package delivery. What did that look like?
So probably not a surprise to anyone. North Dakota is a very rural agricultural state, and at the time, the first research that we were doing was supporting one of the research universities, North Dakota State University. It's our land grant college, very heavy on the ag side, and doing a lot of UAS research, for precision agriculture. And I look at, I break down the types of operations that we conduct. Some of it being, I'll say, UAS integration type of work that could be, testing a sensor, if that's a radar or a UAS itself. And then there's that application side, where really the aircraft is not quite as important as probably the sensor that's a little bit more important. And a lot of the work was really focused around that. We already had an existing aircraft or existing type of capability, and we're looking at the research from an application standpoint, really heavy on the precision ag side of things. Disease, staying counts of, how do you determine, your overall crop health. That's where we started, and I'll say that was going to be one of those big breakout types of markets. And I don't think that we've completely gotten there yet. I think a big component of it is the lack of scalable beyond visual line of sight. I think that when you're doing hundreds of acres an hour is not very good. We need to be doing thousands, if not tens of thousands of acres an hour in order for this to be scalable. And that takes a more, complex UAS, more complex approvals, that type of thing. So we've definitely learned a lot, of what can be done and what kind of limitations as well.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned beyond visual line of sight, and we'll definitely get into that a little bit later and talk about the network you guys are building out in North Dakota. So, and if anyone's joining for this the podcast for the first time, we talk about a couple of articles from the past week, and then we shift gears into the interview portion, which will be with our guest this week, Nick. So the first article I wanted to touch on. So earlier this month, Drone Industry Insights released its drone industry report, revealing that Chinese drone giant DJI to be the top commercial drone manufacturer. Companies close followed by Chinese company Yuneec and France-headquartered Parrot drones. The report stated that DJI is no doubt the leader and is estimated to own 70 to 80% of the commercial sector worldwide. So I think this is just kind of remarkable when you think about the market share that this company has. At a high level, to either of you guys, what do you think are potential concerns for a company having this much market share? And then again, DJI has paved the way for this industry to evolve. Both, it's created a system that companies can create payloads for. It has proven the benefit of government organizations to use these types of aircraft and have made them affordable and integratable. So I'd love to just kind of get your guys' insights on what you think this means for the health of our emerging industry.
Yeah, I think this wasn't hugely surprising to me. I mean, DJI has always kind of led the way, and there's kind of no denying that they've been instrumental in leading the industry forward. They make reliable drones, and as we kind of just discussed last week too, there really hasn't been any evidence of like data insecurity. They also make specific drones for public agencies that don't, have data transmission or ability to connect to the Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi with these concerns in mind. That we've been discussing these concerns for many years. I think I will say that this article made me think that it will be kind of interesting to see what the potential or the federal funds ban, kind of how this affects DJI's market share as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I look at, I'll say from a test site enabling, really my focus areas. We've also, been participating in the UAS integration pilot program, and we start looking at, advanced operations and things that are scalable, maybe not even on a Part 107 basis, but moving into, Part 91 when you start looking at certified equipment. And, there's going to be at some point some type of momentum shift, from, although they're calling it a commercial product, maybe I call it a consumer grade product. The fact that it does not have airworthiness tied to it, it fits the mold perfectly of a Part 107, and it's an incredible way to introduce users to UAS. The ease of flight, the price point, all of those types of things. So I look at, there's an absolute market segment that is directly tied to that. But as I just mentioned on the agricultural side, what if I want to do more? What if I want to fly those longer distances? Right now, those products, even, the companies that you're talking about, in that article, they're not the ones who are meeting that need for us right now, which is fine. There's going to be two parts of the market. So it's going to be, kind of interesting, are we always going to be sitting in, a smaller UAS that has a specific, flight endurance of 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or are we going to start to see a trend towards, something that the market tells us, no, I need 2 hours, 3 hours. And, what's going to happen with, does DJI step up? Do they provide something that is a certifiable product that can meet a lot of these needs? I don't know. It's going to be kind of fun to see, where that leads.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I feel like when the UAS industry was kind of in its early stages, a lot of the drones that we were seeing for more specialized operations just ended up being DJI or other drones that had certain components like added to make them useful for these verticals. But now I think we're seeing with energy and with agriculture, there are drones coming out that are specifically designed for that, to have larger payloads, longer flight times. So yeah, I think we might start to kind of see a shift.
Mm-hmm. And back to those long distance flights, if I can't fly BVLoS, do I need a drone that can fly for 4 hours? Right. So once we have that, the possibility to do that, it creates a need, or it creates a demand, and then hopefully these companies will will supply the product for us. So Yeah, interesting. And back to just like to the health of the industry, is an established industry healthy with somebody owning 70 to 80% market share? Probably not. But I think that if we're in an emerging industry, and if we're trying to get somewhere sustainable, that if it is going to get us there faster with a company kind of dominating the market, then maybe that's where we find ourselves, and maybe it's worth it. So
yeah, that's a tough one. And I think that when you really look at the sky, the size and scale of the market share, I look at right now, again, DJI, when I say the word drone, to most people, that's like their visualization is probably a Phantom, for example. And now, kind of progressing into some of their, other types of products. The interesting part is that I can have, at a pure hobby consumer side of things, on maybe a Mavic or something along those lines, can also be used by our first responders to, be used in a law enforcement type of scenario. So the fact that I can have a single product that can, hit a multitude of different types of use cases and operations,
right.
that's hard to beat, right
Yeah.
now. I think that's, we need others. We need others to be able to do that. Not that it's
Right.
bad. It'd be worse, I think, if we had 70% of a market share of a really subpar product.
Right.
So yes, we have that going for us.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think back to your point about being like an introductory product that can be used for multiple use cases, it makes that investment much easier to stomach from, like a law enforcement body or a different government organization that wants to test or try out this technology and see if it's actually going to get the, come with the results that they're looking for. So let's talk about the second article. So the new UAS test center in San Bernardino Airport opened in July and now provides local facility for the development of unmanned aerial systems, skills, and technologies. The UAS program was announced earlier this month by the Inland Valley Development Agency in partnership with the San Bernardino County Fire District. The center provides UAS technology companies a location to conduct test flights to a commercial airport. So Nick, I wanted to just get your kind of take, the progression of these test sites. And one thing that was, I guess at first, how prominent are these test sites? And this one seems like it's maybe a little bit smaller, but nonetheless, it's a commitment. They're going to create this test site and eventually train first responders with it. One part that was interesting to me is it's actually in the airport, which I know is usually a no-fly zone for most unmanned systems. But I guess, can you just talk about the general landscape of test sites here in the U.S. and then compare and contrast like a test site near an airport, what data and flight missions you may be able to run there versus something, away from an airport?
Yeah, so it's great. I don't look at when these are popping up or something along those lines. To me, they probably there's some type of need that was that's being fulfilled. So I think from that standpoint, great. And I think that even when the 7 test sites that the FAA has designated, there was. It's not that random, it wasn't like really who was picking. There was criteria that was being met. I mean, we're spread out all over the country, from New York, Virginia, Texas, New Mexico, Nevada, up to Alaska. That's on purpose. That we're geographically spread out. There's different types of testing environments that each one of us has, and people always ask us, so are you in competition with the other test sites? Is it a competition? And I have a hard time saying that we're competitors. I mean, there's absolutely some proposals that maybe we go after, like on a federal side, that each of us are trying to fulfill. But for the most part, there's probably another reason why an entity is going to a particular test site over another. One of them being maybe just location. If I, do I expect somebody from, San Bernardino to come to North Dakota to do law enforcement training? Probably not. I mean, I'm probably not. I probably don't have anything that's that special to them for that particular type of use case. So that's fine. I look at, what do I try to do in North Dakota is I try to make sure that if I do want to set myself apart, I'm going to give some type of capability that you can't get somewhere else, and hopefully that provides an opportunity. And so I look at, what's the value of doing it at an airport? You have a very controlled environment. That's great. For the types of use cases that they're looking to probably test and train there, that's great. When I go back to my, but it's not going to be it's not a one size fits all. That's not going to be where an egg operator is going to determine whether or not they're, to test out a sensor for crop health. This isn't going to probably be maybe it will, an area where an OEM is going to, test fly their product. When there's, again, an airport, there's, with every good side of it, there's other risk, manned airplanes that are flying there. We do a lot of our really early testing in, areas that have, zero population and zero flight activity going on. So, I look at, an opportunity like this it's fine, it's great. I think that it's going to probably fit a niche market for them. And that's what we're even trying to create, maybe at, larger scales. But for the most part, we're trying to provide an environment for, companies or industries to come to, that they're going to be able to find value that maybe they would not have been able to, someplace else.
Right. Leslie, any comments?
No, it's just so interesting to hear. I think, Nick, when you and I first talked about kind of the different needs of each state, and so kind of making sense why each one was chosen. I mean, North Carolina is doing very different things than North Dakota, so it's just interesting to hear what comes out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to your point, Nick, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's so many different types of operations and requirements for different operations. And it's just great to see commitment from these different cities, from these different jurisdictions to training and implementing this technology. So third and final article I want to touch on, and we're staying kind of in airports for this. So an Israel Aerospace Industries produced Heron. It made history on September 2nd, the first UAS to land at a major international airport and integrate into civilian airspace alongside commercial flights. What was also interesting about this is it was the entire flight, including takeoff and landing, was operated from the departure airport. So I just thought that was interesting. To either of you guys, do you think we'll see, can you compare and contrast? Do you think we'll see small drone designated landing areas, takeoff areas, mini quote drone airports, or how? What proportion of drone flight do we think will actually integrate into existing airports and maybe even land on runways that existing commercial airlines do?
It does seem like I was just going to say, it does seem like for the U.S. at least, a lot kind of relies on the remote ID decision. I mean, nothing can kind of move forward without that.
Yeah. So let's go with this size aircraft. That's being discussed in the article. It feels like a manned airplane. I always love, and I'm guilty of this. Being the first of this, first of that. There's probably an asterisk next to whatever that first is. That there's something going on. And the only reason I even bring that up is, I've got routine operations happening in North Dakota with our Air National Guard flying, General Atomics airplanes routinely at an international airport, and New York is doing the same thing in Syracuse, and so we're seeing that, and quite honestly, that's what actually the whole story is, that we have UAS that are landing with manned airplanes, and that type of capability, and I love it. I mean, that's a great thing to see, that we're getting ourselves more advanced types of technologies that can integrate. I mean, that's true integration. When we're integrating into the airspace, when you have manned and unmanned airplanes that can be used in the exact same facilities, that's a win. Anytime that we have to start making, like what you're just mentioning, different types of airports or facilities to accommodate a UAS operation, I start to wonder, why do I need to do that? Why do I need to have a different facility for them? What can the manned airport not do, and why do I need to, make new infrastructure in order to support it? So, seeing these, a couple different things on the large UAS. We see a lot of point A to point A flying, which means that a UAS takes off and lands from the same airport. Maybe it's doing a surveillance type of mission or something along those lines. But we're going to see more integration when I can actually start going from point A to point B. I can actually take off from one airport and land at another airport. Those are going to be some true milestones that we're going to see. These are the right steps. Let's get them integrated, and then we'll be able to watch where it goes from there.
Yeah, I think that point A to point B part is especially interesting. And like we mentioned earlier, the pilot was able to fly and complete the entire mission from the departure airport, so he didn't need to pass off control to somebody at the airport that the aircraft was landing in. So just it was great progress, great developments in the industry. So Nick, let's talk a little bit more about the Northern Plains UAS test site. So what does it look like for somebody who hasn't seen it? What are the types of terrains? Are there opportunities to conduct flight maybe between mountainous areas, or from water back to land? And what are some of the notable operations we are working on right now?
Yeah, so I'll start with the mountain. There's not one to be seen. Well, we had all those removed years ago, and we're pretty flat when it comes to that type of terrain. So I'm gonna go with this. People always want to say, "Hey, can I come to the test site? Can I see what's going on?" And I got to be honest, it's pretty anticlimactic, because I bring you to my office, and we can sit around a conference table, and they're like, "Well," because everyone has in their mind what I'm gonna call like a test range. And the test range being, there's radars and antennas and sensors and all these types of things.
Drones flying everywhere.
And quite honestly, from the get-go, we specifically did not go that path. We did not. I'm gonna call it like a test range. And the reason behind that is, we're here to support industry, and I want to make sure that I can go to where industry needs us to fly. And the FAA has been very responsive to that, of allowing us to get the appropriate flight approval so that we can fly, quite honestly, anywhere in the country. Now, we do a lot of work obviously in North Dakota, but if I have a customer who has a use case in California, then we support them there. And what it really allows us to be, as from a test site standpoint, we're able to really specifically meet industry needs. That industry need could be, going back to my conversation about applications, on an agricultural side of things. If I wanted to determine the specific, health of a specific crop, well, I got to go to a field that actually has that specific crop. If my test range didn't have that, then I don't get to support them. If I go back towards, the airport that we just talked about, and I have a a customer who wants to test their UAS for the very first time. They wanted to see if this thing can even get, airborne, 5 to 10 feet off the ground for 30 seconds. I'm going to tell them that doing it at an airport where there's other activity going on and probably higher population, that's probably not going to be a good spot for you. But if I can bring you to an area that is remote and meets those requirements, now I'm in good shape. And so really from the get-go, we've set ourselves up to be remote. So what does it look like? We've got ourselves a mobile mission operations center that that can be deployed in order to meet testing needs. We did, so you talk about water, different types of things. We did a test with NASA supporting one of their UTM builds, and we did part of it on a frozen lake, and part of it on land, just as it was more from the area, not necessarily that we needed to be going off of a frozen lake, but it allowed us to really go again where the customer needed to be, and that can also be at an airport. The state of North Dakota has made a fairly significant investment into a UAS business park called Grand Sky. The two anchor tenants are Northrop Grumman and General Atomics. General Atomics routinely flies their Predator aircraft not on the DoD side, purely on a civilian side, own company pilot training, that type of work, sensor development work. They need a runway to do that. They need the airspace access that's national airspace, not restricted airspace. And we're able to provide all that for them in North Dakota.
Yeah, it sounds like North Dakota kind of has a myriad of opportunities for these kind of different testing scenarios. And with that in mind too, we talked a little bit about this, but I'd be curious to hear about kind of the criteria a couple years ago behind becoming one of the FAA test sites.
So, yeah, the criteria was, this was in the 2012 FAA's Modernization Reform Act. They kind of said, hey, Congress select them, and there was some diversity types of questions in there for weather, type of weather diversity, terrain adversity, population, kind of the whole gamut, so that it was not supposed to be a one single site could meet all of those requirements, that each of us had to meet different types of requirements, so that again we go back to being complementary with each other as opposed to competing with each other.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I liked how you said earlier that it's really not a competition, because each state kind of has different things and objectives that they're going. Could you compare and contrast for us a little bit, kind of the different things that the different test sites are doing, and maybe operations that have served as inspiration for your test site, or kind of the ways in which you interact with the other test sites?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're definitely each have a slight uniqueness, and part of that uniqueness comes into who is who's kind of the lead on the test site. So each one of them are a little bit different. So we have for myself, we're actually the applicant for the test site for North Dakota was the North Dakota Department of Commerce. And you ask, what does an agency that generally cares about economic development care about drone integration? We really look at it from a standpoint of diversifying our economy. How do I bring technology companies to the state? How can this be a benefit for really everybody within the state? If that's supporting our research universities, great. If it's supporting private industry, we're kind of hitting all of those. You have some specific universities, though. You have Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, Virginia Tech, and University of Alaska Fairbanks. Those are your lead participants. So obviously those have angles that are tied into some of their university components. No, that doesn't mean that everything that they're doing is university research. We absolutely see that entities like have been, really helping out with, everything from wings, package delivery to the work that State Farm is doing on the insurance industry. But the fact that the way things look right now is you generally have to demonstrate a capability before you can commercialize it, and really having that research component as foundational. We leverage our research universities in the state tremendously for a lot of that work. Then you look at it's the Griffith Airport in New York that is actually their applicant for the test site. You talk about a really unique operation up there where at an airport. So they have I'm going to call it like an infield, like the center of the airport, where they can do non-runway type of activity, and then they also have access to runways, and it can expand out from there. It doesn't have to be just specifically at the Griffith Airport in Oneida County, but it can go to other spots within the state. But that provides a very unique types of opportunities there. And you can look at Nevada, some of a good example that they were able to do the last build for the NASA's UAS traffic management program was they called it TCL4. They did the operations in Reno, and one of the things that was supposed to be demonstrated was tall buildings. There's a lot of challenges flying around buildings and populations, and that type of environment, especially as we start to move into your package delivery to even into your urban air mobility. North Dakota, I don't have that. I don't have tall buildings and high population densities, but Reno did, and that's something that's greatly beneficial that Nevada is able to take advantage of. So each of us kind of can touch a little bit different types of areas.
So Nick, talk to us more about the BVLoS network you guys are working to build out in North Dakota, and the testing you're doing at the test site. Who's behind this project? You mentioned the Department of Commerce filled the application to get the test site, the FAA approved test site in North Dakota. Who is kind of footing the bill for this testing? Is it the state? Is it the FAA? And then also talk a little bit about the drone you guys are building out the network with, the Valancy aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the funding, because I think that's an important component. I'm going to say we're in a very beneficial situation where I have state legislators and a governor who's looking to really double down on previous investments that we've made. In order to, we have a specific $28 million investment that's going out to enabling this network across the state. And so it's state funded, and it's the test site itself. We're I'll say the responsible party for the execution of this. So, no pressure of,
yeah. Be the first state to roll this out. No
right.
pressure.
First, but quite honestly, we're making sure that this is something that's scalable. I do not want that. It will be a failure if this is a one-off solution that only works in North Dakota. One of the very first people that we called was the FAA, and I said, I need to make sure that everything that we're doing is going to be in lockstep with you. I don't want to have something that's going to be that we're going to have special requirements or privileges in the landscape of future regulation and future certification requirements, all of that. But to give a little bit of so why are we even doing this? What's kind of the driver behind this? A lot of it kind of stems back from, I'll say, the work that we've been doing over the last 7 years, and challenges that we have been seeing. One of the big challenges is we're not seeing scaled beyond visual line of sight operations occurring, and we've seen some major leaders in the industry, like BNSF. They've been, they were the first pathfinder for beyond visual line of sight. They've made some significant investments in order to enable beyond visual line of sight. I've worked closely with Xcel Energy as they've been flying across their transmission lines. I also know that there's been heavy investment for them, and I think so. What is that heavy investment? Like, what does that actually mean? I'll give you an example. Is I can go down in North Dakota. I can be driving on one of our interstates, and when I think about the interstate, our Department of Transportation would love to be doing inspections of that roadway. And for them to fly beyond visual line of sight, the first thing that they need is, there's a couple components. There's how do I make sure that I don't run into manned airplanes? I need some type of surveillance system. If that's a radar or ADS-B, for cooperative aircraft, I need to deploy, some type of remote infrastructure for radars. And then the second component is, I need something to fly long distances from like a command and control standpoint. A lot of UAS are limited on radio line of sight. It actually doesn't allow you to fly very far. So they want to fly longer distances. They need to put out some type of C2 radio network. And then in order to have all this stuff talk, they need to have it all run through some type of networking, backhaul network. And from there, you probably want to have it, be displayed somewhere in some type of operations center. And then you have to have a UAS that can meet these requirements, that's a little bit more advanced, that can actually talk to a network and meet all these requirements. So for a Department of Transportation, that's a pretty heavy lift in order to do that. And especially if I actually look just onto the shoulder, just off the interstate, I might see a train passing by. I go, hey, there's BNSF. And if they want to fly beyond visual line of sight, everything that I just mentioned, that's what they've deployed. I mean, they've literally deployed all of those different components. And if I actually just go a little bit to the, right a little bit more off the interstate, there's a transmission line. And Xcel has, literally deployed all of that stuff to do an operation. And right now, we have companies like BNSF and Xcel Energy that, for better or worse, are having to become, I'm going to call them aviation companies. They have to work with the FAA. Both of them have specific partnerships with the FAA. And that's not even their core business, but they're having to become aviation experts. And they're having to make significant investments in infrastructure that is only good for themselves. And we don't do that in anything else if it's aviation or transportation. If it's aviation, we don't fly into, the Delta Los Angeles airport that's 5 miles from the American Airlines, Los Angeles airport that's 5 miles away from the other. No, we all fly across the country using the same navigation aids. We all land at the same airports, and we use shared infrastructure. So the state of North Dakota is going, hey, what would it look like if we could actually have one infrastructure for multiple users? And, that's really the premise, is that we're putting together, I kind of those four components. So you look at the remote infrastructure that needs to be installed, the backhaul network, an ops center that meets some and deploy this into an area that is going to benefit more than one user. It dramatically reduces the barrier of entry of being able to do these operations. These companies don't have to make an upfront investment to deploy it all. They don't need to work with the FAA to get all the appropriate approvals. We can take care of all of that stuff on their behalf. So that's kind of the, what the vision of it looks like. I look at it from, if you look at like a wireless carrier's, coverage map, Verizon is not trying to make the entire country red of their coverage. They're trying to make the entire country red where there's users. And we're kind of in the same situation. I'm not looking to cover every inch of the state of North Dakota. I want to cover every inch of the state of North Dakota that that we have multiple users that would be able to benefit, from this. We brought on, some of the through a competitive process, we brought on 3 system integrators to help support us. To me, these are best in breed when it comes to aviation infrastructure. Collins Aerospace, which is now a Raytheon company, L3 Harris, and Thales USA. All of these, they're not new to this. They understand what I'll call aviation grade, something that's reliable, which is a big deal. And then we needed to have a UAS to start validating this. And again, we went out for a competitive bid through an RFP process, and we now have a partner with Valancy with their Volley C10, which there was a lot of different types of requirements. Again, we wanted to make sure that it's a UAS that can fly these more advanced types of operations. That can meet some. Bring on, I can install a C2 radio onto it, and have a support of an OEM that's maybe willing to do a little front end engineering work, and have that level of support. And really, I mean, it's a team. It's an absolute team in order to deploy all of this, and we're getting really excited about. There's a lot of foundational steps in order to figure out what this is going to look like. Coming up with a functional architecture of, pre-flight planning to flight execution to, when the mission is done, what does all this look like? What are the requirements? We work with the FAA, weekly on, giving them updates of where we're at. And we know that there's going to be a lot of regulatory approvals that will need to be made along the way. And, we're reaching out to kind of two components of the network. I call them customers and users. So a customer of a network, maybe that's an oil and gas company where they have a need, right? They want data, they want to do a pipeline inspection, whatever it happens to be. But they don't want to fly the UAS, they just want the data that comes off of the UAS. So they're a customer because they get what they need because the network is in place. And then I have a user on the network, which might be the oil and gas company. They might be the ones who are actually flying it and collecting their own data. But maybe it's a third-party operator. Maybe it's another company that's they're the user of the network because they're the ones who are flying, and then they're going to provide that information or that data to their end customer. So. That's a lot going on there, but it's a heck of a snapshot of, a little bit of the vision and how we've got to where we are.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's a lot of parties need to get on the same page, but I think it's so cool what you guys are doing and that you're trying to build something scalable, but also reusable in these other states and create those kind of these examples and get this data so that other states can potentially roll this out. Maybe real quick, in your conversation with the FAA, has remote ID come up, and what does a BVLoS network look like with or without a remote ID framework?
Yeah, so everything that we're trying to do is, as we watch, I look at, if remote ID, or if I even just genericize UTM in general, we're making sure that we're following along on every step of the way that the FAA is doing so that we can have that stuff incorporated. So the architecture that we're doing will absolutely, there's a couple different, there's broadcast and network, remote ID, at least we think that there is. The NPRM, alluded to that. So, obviously on the network side of things, I mean, that's specifically what we're doing. So, I would say that that's going to be fairly straightforward. Other types of broadcast, if that ends up being the network having to support that, or if there's another entity, I'm going to say a little unknown. I'm trying not to guess on what the FAA is going to do. I'm trying to, once they roll something out, we already know that there's going to be a rollout timeline that's tied to it. and we want to make sure that we'll be able to support it. I absolutely know that remote ID is an important component. We've heard from the FAA, at their symposiums, over the last couple of years that should have been the very first rule that they ever put out, that they shouldn't, that they admittedly know that they're late to the game on this, and that this is going to be something that's, especially for their security partners, that this is something that's really foundational for the UAS industry. So I think we're following along. There's going to be, if there's a USS, some type of service supplier that, needs to feed, remote ID information in, we want to be open and be able to accept that. No different than any other type of supplemental data, providers that could be enhancing, advanced UAS types of operations.
Well, Nick, final question for you. What, if anything, is holding the industry back, and what maybe excites you the most about just being a part of the broader drone industry, UAS industry?
So I think that I go back from like the holding back or, the excitement. They're kind of like, in some ways they're like synonymous. It just matters what, am I looking backwards or am I looking forward? Some of if I like look backwards, I mean, we had literal types of approvals that took years in order to get, multiple years. And you go, God, if I knew that this was going to take 2 years, would I have even gone through this entire process? And the answer, like looking forward, is like, and now in hindsight, you're going, I'm really glad I did it, when we did it.
Right.
So I look at why are things changing over time? We're actually getting a lot more clarity, from industry, participation in standards groups, ASTM, coming out with a parachute standard that allows for operations over people. That wasn't an FAA, standalone initiative. That's not a regulation. That was industry coming together to show a safe way of doing things. And, we've seen acceptance from the FAA on that. That's a clear path in order to get something accomplished. So I think it's fun to be a part of that as we start to see more of these standards be developed. Even regulation changes. If we see, come out at the end of the year, operations over people, remote ID, there's going to be, I think, a component of night in there. We're getting clarity on something that was really vague. We always want more. I mean, people weren't excited when the 7 came out. They were excited that there was an entire waiverable section of Part 7. We weren't excited that we could fly, 400 feet, visual line of sight. We were excited that there was an opportunity for us to waive the daytime only requirement so that we could fly at night. But we didn't even know what that looked like at the very beginning. We didn't know, what standard were we going to be held to? What was that going to be look like? So we guess. And as an industry, we all kind of guessed so much that we finally were able to come, to a way that getting a night waiver is pretty straightforward. And that's great. That's helping doing more advanced UAS operations. So it takes time. That's why I look, looking backwards, I think that there's challenges, but looking forward, every time that I get, some type of new precedent that's being set, or, somebody else in the industry is setting the bar a little bit higher, that's good for all of us. And that's, as part of the integration pilot program or part of the test site, I feel that we're kind of on the front lines of all of that. We're supporting, not just our industry partners, but we're supporting the entire UAS industry as a whole.
Right. Yeah, I think without a doubt, you guys are on the front line. And, this BVLoS network is super exciting to see. Exciting to see the progress here. And in the States, we've seen a lot of these advancements. I feel like we keep looking to overseas, so it's really exciting to see a lot of this stuff happening here now. So. Well, Nick, thanks again for being here. We'll let you go. if anybody wants to get in touch and learn a little bit more or kind of keep up on some of the work that you guys are doing at the test site, how could they find some of that information?
Sure. We got a website. It's npuasts.com. So I think Northern Plains UAS test site, just, from an acronym standpoint, npuasts.com. It's a great way. Otherwise, if you're a LinkedIn kind of, person, reach out and, we'll get ourselves connected.
Great. We'll put those links in the description below. Nick will also be speaking at InterDrone Online, December 15th through 17th. So you can hear more from him then. If you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, make sure to hit subscribe, ring the bell, sign up for alerts. This will be on Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever pods are casted. So thanks again to Leslie and Nick, and everybody have a great week.
Hey, thank you very much again for having me.